Okay, teacher thinking, we're back. This is the middle part of the conference that we're talking about. So you've gotten there, done all that stuff. Where do you go from there? As I said before, a big important thing is to give the message that you're there to support the teacher, support the school. How can we do that? They know you're there for that, but it's worth repeating. It bears repeating. There's no reason not to. There are a couple of things that are a little bit like wasted breath, I would say. Nothing wrong with saying them, but to say that someone, he really wants to do well, okay, I mean, sure, everybody wants to do well. It's a rare child who doesn't want to do well at any grade. And, so it's a little bit wasted breath. And what I think you can do is replace that with something a little more valuable, which would be to say something like, he really enjoyed the way that you taught about this particular section of the book or one character from a book, or he liked the way you did something in math or whatever, just, some little specific thing. And you might be hanging by a very tenuous thread with that, but if you've got something that actually happened and the teacher may remember, that's a great thing. The teacher will feel complimented, and what will happen is that he or she will go back and be thinking about how little Johnny liked that reading part, and then, they'll kind of give a little more attention on that. Now it's amazing what can grow from that. One of the most common things is, it seems like when you go to teacher or parent advice sites and stuff, they're always saying that to move the child to the front of the class. Uh, if you think that can help, I would ask about it. But I would say, do you think moving them up would help? And I'll tell you why. It doesn't always help. It's by no means like the privileged position or the best place to be in class. And this goes for ADD kids, everything. That is not necessarily the right place for them. If you have a kid who's in the middle of the class and is always looking here and there and back over here and, wants to see what's going on, trying to remove that by moving them up it will not help in that case. Or it may not. I mean, every case is individual, obviously, but it won't necessarily help, because what'll happen is he'll be looking back to see what everybody else is doing the whole time. The focus will be on the back, not you, not the teacher. So the best place for a kid like that might well be at the back of the room. And that way he can see everything that's going on and you. And that might be something that works a lot better. Uh, Sometimes, I mean, there is a certain politics to that in the classroom as well, where if you're not doing well, you move to the front of the class. And, that can be a touchy subject for certain kids. They may not want to be right up in front because that marks them as like, not doing well. So you have to be sensitive to that too. You might want them a little off to the side or something. Sometimes the side is the best place you can be. You can still see everything. You're still pretty close. You can hear everything well. No distractions on this side. Maybe there's a place where the window isn't too much of a draw. So a lot of that really should come down to the teacher's judgment, and you need to trust that. And anyway, it's not a panacea. Also, I can remember one class where I had over half and almost 2/3 of the parents asking for their child to move to the front of the class. So just tell me what I'm supposed to do about that. One thing I did learn eventually is, I did this the last several years I was teaching, and I kind of wish I'd known this before. But at one point I noticed we had some sort of grandparents' day thing, and we had to change this seating arrangement, and then I just left it there for a week or two. And I had some of the desks right in front of my desk, and then there was another one like right here. And it was very convenient. You should be teaching on your feet and walking around, and et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes you're at your desk, and if they're writing something, then they can just ask a quick question, and it's not this big official hands up kind of thing, which they may avoid. They may not want to do that. You can just track things pretty well. Uh, I noticed that sometimes where there'd be days where I'd say, move your desk anywhere you want. Some of them would move it right up to my desk. So I said, all right. Finally, I said, let me just try this out. So I had, like, eventually I would have two students with their desks right in front against my desk, that close. Two other ones right next to it. Um, you know, after a while I was like, why did there always have to be like 12 feet of separation there? What's the point? I mean, is this like some sacrosanct ground? It's not an altar. I don't think they're going to steal stuff. One time one kid did, but whatever. Uh, that's not a problem. So what you could do is you could keep track of those kids. They weren't the worst kids. They weren't the smartest kids. It wasn't a reward or a punishment. It's mostly for kids who had a lot of questions, or if I wanted to observe them a little closer, because you say as they're reading, what you do is when you're that close, you can look at their eyes, see what their eyes are doing on the page, and you can get a lot out of that. You can also get a lot out of watching how they write and interact with the question in the book and finding stuff, and you just sort of observe, and you can get more out of that than when the kid's farther away. So there are things that can be done with that, but it's not an automatic, and it's not always the best thing. I also got this good. This is actually a good website about questions you can ask the teacher when you're in that conference. So let me get these up, because there we go. Some of these are really good. This one, what is your preferred method of asking a question about my student? You know what I think is more important than that is what you as a parent is your preferred method of being contacted. Because you can really waste some time with calls that go to work or home, but nobody's home, and this will come in the file. There'll be numbers, and there'll be a lot of numbers, but which one should I call first? Which one should I call second? And I don't know. You might just give the teacher a list, like, if you have a call, please call this one first. That's Diane. Call the second one. That's me. Whatever the order is. Sometimes there'd be confusion if I asked that, and they'd think it was emergency numbers, which it isn't. But just, when you do get a chance to call, you don't want to be wasting time trying to track somebody down, or you get the wrong. I've called people in China before. Turns out it's the dad's number. He's like, well, I'm actually in China. I have no idea what's going on right now at home, so can you call my wife? What can I do to support you and make your job easier, blah, 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 as I was saying, what can I do at home to keep academic behavior expectations on track? That's a pretty broad question, but I would ask it, How can I best stay on top of what's happening in school or in the classroom? Well, you can ask questions. You can wait for the teacher to call. They'll give you some answers, I think that's a good one to ask. I'll put this in the comments too, so you can glance these over. There are 50 questions altogether. You're never going to get through 50, but you can, and they're not all for certain grades, but what do you suggest if he gets stuck on homework? What is your teaching style, and how can we be consistent? That hopefully is clear already, just based on the school, what its teaching style is. What are your suggestions for limiting online time and social media for this age? I would ask that, and hopefully you're going to get the same answer you'll get from me, which is little as possible. It's your enemy. It really is. As far as supporting the school, actually it starts with this. I should show you this first. 1 second, but supporting the school, keeping them away from the cell phone and the social media and the tweets and everything is a huge part. Now, this website I find interesting because 10 ways you can help your child succeed in middle school. All right, they've got it for elementary school, and they've got it for upper school as well. First three are all the same for each one. Attend back to school night and parent-teacher conferences. Okay, of course. Visit the school on its website. Yeah, okay, good idea. Support homework expectations, right? That's individualized, and you can figure that out. Send your child to school ready to learn, and not everybody really knows this, but a nutritious breakfast. I mean, I think a lot of people know that, but they don't quite see how important it is. The first part of the day is the most important part, and they need some energy for that, and right amount of sleep. Right amount of sleep. And look at what they say about this. Preteens need about 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. Teens need about 8.5 to 9.5 hours. It's true. Cutting back on it, you can function, but when they test people's cognitive abilities, they find that you're taking IQ points away when you miss sleep, and that's what you can do as a parent. Make sure they're well fed and well rested. Make sure they've got their stuff ready in the morning. What can I say? That's something the teacher cannot control. So that's really is up to you. All right. Anyway, what are your suggestions limiting it? Okay. Does my child have too many extracurricular activities? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to answer every question, but you have to judge that for yourself. I remember telling one parent, I said, I really, I mean, he was having a lot of trouble, and, he seems like he's at hockey all the time. And she said, well, I know, but it's like the only joy he really gets in life right now. And I was like, well, God bless him. Keep him going to hockey then. We can't just take away that. That's crazy. All right, questions for the beginning of the year. Name the top 5 skills you hope a child will walk away with. And I hope you don't say name the top 5 skills, but what do you want the child to walk away with this year? That is a great question. It may put the teacher on the spot a little bit, but they'll come up with an answer. And the general thing like that is the best thing, especially at the beginning of the year. What generally are you really looking for? What questions do you recommend I ask my child on a daily basis about what is happening at school or in your class? You know what? I think I'm going to answer this one, because I would say daily basis, no, nothing. Don't ask anything on a daily basis. That gets to be just harassment after a while from the child's standpoint. It's helicopter parenting to constantly be asking. Now, you may need to do that. There may be somebody who's very disorganized, and you just need to be on top of that. Hopefully you'll develop that over time, what you need to do. But, what's happening at school, where I really see the danger is certain people who will have a little mental health check or something at the end of the day. Is anyone bullying you? Is anyone being mean? Do you feel good? Eventually, if you keep asking that question, they're going to give you answers just to get you off their back. And, they may say something about something that somebody did that really is not significant, and it can start getting blown up out of proportion. You don't want to miss anything, but if you keep asking, eventually you're going to get an answer, whether there's an answer there or not, because it's like torture. Eventually they'll just tell you whatever that you want to hear, and just be careful about that. What can you do at home to encourage growth in a fun and stimulating way? Are there field trips, and is there a cost to the families? How can I help my child be more organized with homework without completely taking over? That counts for all of these grades and everything. And you have to do as much as you need to do. Hopefully nothing. That's the goal. And hopefully nothing. And if they forget something, then they have to deal with the consequences the next day. They shouldn't start to rely on you to do everything for them. And because if you do too much for them, then you're also at the one to blame if they're not ready, and they shouldn't be blaming you. But anyway. Independence, this is middle school, handle absences and missed tests. Okay, just to move along here. Progress, I'll attach this so you can look at it if you want. But I think a good question for lower grades, what subject areas emerging as my child's strongest? Especially younger grades, it's great to focus on the positive, because a lot of times it's just developmental, and they'll come along after a while with another subject. And we don't always want to focus too much on the weaknesses. I mean, I'm amazed so much at how resilient kids are because, they go to school and they don't choose any of these subjects. And, if they don't do well in something, people want to do more of it. I mean, most adults, I think, would just buckle under the pressure. So, yeah, why not just focus on the positive? Now, for upper grades, that's a little different because you're starting to think about college and, maybe applying to a different high school or a private high school. And, you need some things that are a little more specific. So what are some essential skills for college that are still a growth area for my student? Yeah. Age appropriate accountability, because it's not going to be long before they have to do it all at home, or all by themselves. What about organizational skills? Yeah, that's big. If they don't have those by college, they can have some real trouble. If your child is excelling academically, how do you personalize learning in the classroom? It's a good question. It's a great question. Teachers should not be just allowing the best students to just finish the test in 15 minutes and then read a book. They should have other stuff for them to do that they can keep growing with and not get bored. And they're a resource. If they can be that far ahead of everybody else, then you've got to. It's your obligation to keep giving them stuff that'll allow them to grow. So it goes on like that. If your child's struggling academically, modifications you might make, that's highly individualized, and you have to be really careful about that, because the easiest thing to do is to cut back on the amount of work. But that also worries people sometimes, and rightly so, because they'll tell me, it's like, well, great if we cut back a lot of the work, then is he going to be just going over the stuff that he's going to need later for next year? It's a very valid question. You don't want to kill somebody, but you don't want them falling behind either. What are some tools we can use at home? Okay, that's good. Would you suggest additional help such as a tutor? I used to always say, no, don't get a tutor. I'll do everything. But that's back in your days when you think you're going to be the super teacher. And now that I've been a tutor and I kind of see what a tutor can do, yeah, there are times when it's a good idea. Sometimes it's just really not necessary. Sometimes it can be a big help. And that a lot of that does come down to at least covering the material, at least getting it done, If they know that they're getting some help with it, then that's all fine. That's great. It shouldn't be a secret. But at least that way they've seen all the material when it might be overwhelming for them. And sometimes you can really help them in certain areas when they just need some help. So anyway, what can I do to support literacy? Okay, get rid of the computer again. If they've got a choice between YouTube or a book, you tell me what they're going to choose 99% of the time. My student struggles with spelling. How do I help them without humiliating them? I think, again, I don't want to answer every question, but I think the main thing is just for you and your child to just have an understanding that, we all know that spelling's rough for you. So we're just going to talk about it. And, I'm not judging it here. So, if behavior is a concern, classroom behavior expectations, are they polite and respectful? You know what? This gets forgotten a lot. Are they polite and respectful? That really is important, and that's something that is mostly taught by the parent. And let's face it, it does reflect on the parent. And what I can tell you is that I know kids aren't always going to be polite and everything. But after a while, if you've got a kid that just never says thank you and is not really that respectful, it just slowly starts to grate on you. I mean, it's such a simple thing, you know. Here I got this. I saw that your pencil was running out. I got you a new one. Hmm. You know, I mean, just yeah, you got to know how to say thank you. It's just pretty simple. And then, you know, respectful. That comes down to little things. I mean, it doesn't matter at first, and you can make a joke out of it and everything. But you know, if they're kind of like, oh no, not more work, you know, it can be funny. We people take that in stride, but at the same time, you can't always be doing that. You can't be treating the teacher like a burden. Um, that's just basic politeness and respectfulness. And if you want to get more out of your teacher, then that's really the best way to do it. I mean, I've had so many students who, at the end of the day, without being asked or prompted by anyone, will say thank you to me on the way out the door, and you feel great. What behavior modifications can we make at home to reinforce expectations at school? Yeah, open question. Struggling socially, right? Um, Tell me about your perspective. Yeah, that's the most important thing. What's your perspective? Because your perspective may be totally different from the teacher's. Sometimes kids behave completely different at school than at home, positively or negatively. So if the teacher's saying he doesn't behave, you know, you got to believe it, even if he's a perfect angel at home, because that really just might be the way it is. Um, and don't be all that surprised if the teacher says, "Yeah, he's a great kid. He never does anything wrong with me." You know, there's nothing. They're not saying there's something special about them. They're just haven't seen that, and you know, it could be just a different. It doesn't reflect that does not reflect badly on on the parent. They just in different environments they behave differently, but it's good to explore what's going on with that kind of thing. Conflicts, yeah, should always have an eye out for that. All right. Student with special needs or gifted, is the teacher doing more for the gift? So there are a lot of questions there. I mean, you could never go through this all, but I'll put that in the little thing so that you can kind of peruse those yourself. So that's kind of the middle of the conference. Maybe I'll do something about the end of the conference in the follow up. So hope that was helpful.